Well, good morning, friends, and welcome to my channel. I am Crystal, and this is Homemaking on the Homestead. And today we are going to talk about, can you homestead without land? And we're going to look at what I feel are the connections between homesteading and traditional old-fashioned homemaking. Homesteading typically involves living off the land and being self-sufficient. So land is kind of a core, solid component of homesteading, at least in the traditional way of thinking about it. However, there are a lot of homemaking skills that you can learn no matter where you live. Throughout history, homesteading wasn't even really a concept because it was how most people lived. Most people had to be self-sufficient. They had to be self-reliant. That was the life of our great-great-great-grandparents and beyond in history. In the United States here, homesteading really took off with the Homesteading Act of 1862. And in that, the government would give 160 acres to anyone who qualified for it, and you had to be a U.S. citizen and at least 21 years of age or older, or you had to be a head of a household. In other words, you had to have children. And that really began the westward expansion of our country. And obviously today, homesteading looks nothing like that. But somewhere, I think, in so many of us, is that same desire for self-sufficiency and independence and being self-reliant. Obviously, we're not going to be able to provide everything for ourselves in our society today. There may be people who come pretty close to that, but for most of us, no matter what, we're not going to be able to be self-sufficient in anything, or I should say in everything that we do. But fulfilling some of these desires is not as difficult as it might seem. And there's something that they are things that can be done no matter where you live. You could live in an apartment, you could live in a house in the city, you could live in a condominium, you could live on acreage in the country. It really doesn't matter because there are so many things that you can do regardless of where you live. As a homemaker, I see a huge connection between the desire to homestead and the desire to live out or learn a lot of old-fashioned homemaking skills. So many of these old-fashioned skills are in danger of being lost as in our society, women have moved farther and farther away from these old-time homemaking skills that all of our grandmothers, great-grandmothers and such knew how to do and how to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. But as we learn to do these skills, these old-fashioned skills, which I'm going to talk about what those are here shortly, we not only are being able to hang on to some of that, but we also have a very high sense of accomplishment and a connection to old-fashioned ways of living. Many years ago when I was living in the city, we're talking almost 30 years ago, I lived in the city, and I had never lived in the country. I had been born and raised in the city, and we had a small house, 1,200 square foot house. It was 3 bedrooms, and it was on a 50 by 100 lot. And one of my big dreams as I was having my little babies was that I wanted to live in the country. I wanted to have gardens. I wanted to grow my own food. I wanted to learn to can my own food. I wanted chickens. I wanted goats, I wanted that, what was in my mind, that Little House on the Prairie dream. As a young girl, of course, that was my favorite set of books, and I read them over and over and over. And so in my mind, I had this picture of the Little House on the Prairie lifestyle, and I wanted that so badly. But what could I do? I'm sitting here in the middle of the city. How do you do that? And one day it dawned on me that I could actually look at my home on that 50 by 100 lot and turn it into my own homestead. Obviously, there were going to be things that I could not do, but I could do a lot. And so instead of wishing, whining, or complaining because I didn't have the ultimate dream, I decided to start learning to create what I wanted with what I had. And I grew a big garden in my backyard. I ended up canning. I was able to actually can quite a bit of produce from just a little garden back there. I learned how to bake bread. I learned how to cook from scratch. I started doing all these skills to be more self-sufficient. I would take my kids to farmers markets and you pick farms where we would pick all kinds of fruits and vegetables that I would bring home and turn into jams and jellies and pickles and canned green beans and other canned vegetables. I remember during the summer I would take my kids to the local county fairs around my area so that we could just have as close as we could, a connection to some chickens and goats and just farm life in general. I cultivated what I wanted right in my own little home. I didn't know it at the time, but later on, years later after we had moved, I found out that the city I lived in actually allowed you to have 3 chickens. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, if I had known that, I would have had a tiny little chicken coop in my backyard with 3 chickens in it as well. With all those skills I was learning, I was growing in my knowledge of homesteading and homemaking type skills, things that would make me be able to be more self-sufficient, more self-reliant. There's something encouraging about knowing how to bake your own loaf of bread and not have to run to the grocery store to get bread. If you have basic ingredients in your pantry and you can turn flour, yeast, and water and oil into loaves of bread, there is something that really gives you a sense of accomplishment and a sense of fulfillment. I also learned sewing and mending. I was able to make our own clothing, not all of it, but I did a lot of things for my young children at the time. I made skirts for myself. I did as much as I was able to do. And I also learned how to make things last longer because, I can mend up a tear here rather than saying, oh, put it in the trash, buy a new one. I became more focused on being resourceful and more repurposing things. If I could turn a bunch of old jeans into a quilt, well, then that's what I did. And I did things like that. And again, huge sense of accomplishment. And I was learning these homesteading type skills that were also very old-fashioned homemaking type skills. At the center of this was my own personal desire to do as many things that I could for my family and to create an environment that supported the needs of my family. Many homesteaders find a lot of personal fulfillment and independence in the things that they do. And those homemaking skills, which are / homesteading skills, can do the same thing for us. They can provide personal fulfillment and independence. These types of skills can really produce a lot of satisfaction in your life. They can allow your home to flourish and create a beautiful place for your family to live. Other types of skills that you can learn are things like soap making or candle making. And not always, like we don't need candles for lights, right? But they can add beauty to your home. They can make gifts. Soap making, I've been making soap for years now, and I absolutely love it. It is the best, creamiest, nicest soap that your skin will ever come in contact with. And I highly recommend it. It's really satisfying skill to learn. In fact, I have lots of videos on my channel on making soap, so from right at the beginning, step by step, to help you. You can learn to make your own cleaning supplies from just basic, everyday, inexpensive items. You can learn about herbal medicine and make teas and tinctures and things that can help improve your health and help you make it through the common cold season. You can learn to cook your meals from scratch. Practice having basic items in your pantry and learn to create meals from what you have on hand, as well as how to manage leftovers and be creative with those so food doesn't go to waste. And in the end, these skills benefit your family in many ways, but also financially, as it will lower costs when you're not constantly replacing things, throwing away food. So I would have to say, in the end, that yes, you can learn how to homestead without ever having any land at all, or take what little land you may have and do something with that. Container gardens on a patio, herbs sitting on your windowsill. There are just so many little things that can be done with what you have. I remember reading an article years ago about a couple that had lived in an apartment and raised a few rabbits out on their patio, and they were meat rabbits, I mean, not all of us are going to go down that path, but my point is that there are things that we can do with what we already have. And I think that is the main thing, is that we always need to take a look at what God has already provided us. When we have these goals and we have these desires, what has God already given me? What do I have in my hand, and what can I do with the things that I already have? Before I end this video, I would just like to recommend just a couple, 2 or 3 books. You might be able to find these used. I will leave Amazon links for you, but you might be able to find them at a garage sale or a thrift store or something like this. The one that was my homesteading companion, I could say my homesteading Bible, it was Carla Emery's Encyclopedia of Country Living. This was it is an amazing book. Sadly, Carla Emery passed away several years ago, but they have revised her book, and she has everything you can imagine from that really puts you in the mindset of that simple living, homesteading type mindset. And while the chapters on raising cows or something like that may not apply if you're in the city, there are so many chapters that do. The canning and the bread baking and the gardening and the cooking, and there are just so many things in that book. So that's a highly recommended book. Your library may even have it, and you can peruse through it to see if it's something that would appeal to you. Another one that is a good one is called Back to Basics, A Complete Guide to Traditional Skills, by Abigail Gerhing. Again, I will put a link down to that one too. The same author, Abigail Gerhing, also wrote a second book called Homesteading, A Backyard Guide to Growing Your Own Food, Canning, Keeping Chickens, Generating Your Own Energy, Crafting, Herbal Medicine, and more. I have one of them, which is the original Back to Basics, but I don't have that one. However, it sounds very appealing. There are a lot of good resources. I will connect those at the bottom so that at least you can see the books and find them wherever you want to find them at. But all of these would be great things, great books to be able to keep your focus on those homesteading skills and do what you can with what you have, not what you wish you had, but what you have, and turn wherever you live today into your own little homestead. Okay, ladies, I hope that you found today's video encouraging and that you got inspired by something. And let me know your thoughts on homesteading and homemaking and all those wonderful old-fashioned homemaking skills that we can kind of combine to create our own little homesteads no matter where we live. I hope you all have an amazing weekend and week ahead, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.